Hi everyone, Stepan here. It's Thursday, so welcome to another Thursday endgame video. Today we are going to go over the last part of the opposite colored bishop endgames. And this is going to be, well, the easiest and the hardest part all at once. We are going to look at positions where the pawns for the winning side or for the attacking side are 3 files apart. Now, the further the pawns are apart, the easier it becomes to win, and as we saw in the previous 2 videos. So let me just say that if the pawns are 4 files apart, the endgame is always winning, regardless of where the pawns are. And when the pawns are 3 files apart, there is one exception you have to know, and there are winning techniques you have to know, which are very difficult, and without practice and without knowing the ideas, it's virtually impossible to win these endgames in a tournament game. So let's start by saying that if the pawns are 3 files apart, there are 2 options. They either have to be on knight and bishop files, or they have to be on a rook file and the central file. And those are the 2 options. A general rule is that a rook and the central file pawn are winning if you know the proper technique, which we are going to go over in detail. If the pawns are on bishop and knight files, the endgame is easy to win if the knight pawn is not far advanced. By that I mean if the pawn is not, let's say, on the 7th rank or on the 6th rank, because the farther advanced the knight pawn is, the harder it becomes for you to get your king closer to the queening square. In this case, this position is winning because the pawn is on the 4th rank, and all the white king has to do is get to b7 and then eventually promote. So before we get into the complex stuff, let's go over this. So if it's white to play here, or if it's black to play, black basically has nothing to do but wait. White wants to get here and white wants to win. Okay, get here and then get here and then game over. So let's start with king to b5, or let's say bishop to d4. There are other moves for black, all of them lose. King c6, king e7, trying to prevent you to get there, but now king c7, bishop c3, for example, the pawn advances. Bishop e5 check, king c8, and now it's just game over. If he tries bishop to d4, you simply wait with king to b7. Once your pawn gets to b6, that's the last point where the black bishop can capture it. So for example, king d6, b6, king c5, attacking your pawn, but now king a6, and the pawn is going to b7. So king c6, b7, king c7, f6, and now if the bishop captures the f pawn, you play king a7, king a8, and queen. If the bishop doesn't capture the a pawn, then you just promote. So, for example, bishop takes f6, king a7. He could check you on d4, but now king a8, and you promote on the next turn. There is no option to go to e5 because the pawn promotes anyway. And if the king hadn't blocked the bishop's path from c7, then the pawn would have promoted earlier. So the basic principle is the farther away your knight pawn is, the easier it becomes to win. You could choose to get your king around on the other side of the board. And then the same principle applies. The further down the board the bishop pawn is, the easier it becomes to win. Now let's look at a complex example. So I'm going to go through this position. No, first let's go over this easy position. If both pawns are on the 7th rank, then the endgame is always winning. Just promote one of the pawns and that's it. If you want to pause the video and win this position, it's white to play. Okay, so when both pawns are on the 7th rank, there is no way for the defender to hold, so all you have to do here is play the move bishop to f6. If the bishop is captured, one of the pawns promotes, so king f6, either g8 equals queen or c8 equals queen, bishop captures, then the other pawn promotes. So let's say black plays bishop h3, and now we go king d6. Let's say bishop f5, let's say king c6, and again after bishop e6 all you have to do is get to the queening square, so now probably king f6 is the best move, and now again one of the pawns is going to promote. So before we get on to the more complex stuff, remember that when both pawns are on the 7th rank, and the same goes for rook and central files, the endgame is just 1. Okay, now on to the complex stuff. When the knight pawn is on the 7th rank, there is a possibility for the defender to draw. And I'm going to use a position by Spielman to illustrate that. I tried to do the same thing with random positions I was setting up. Sometimes that would work, sometimes that wouldn't work. So don't take it as a rule that when your knight pawn is on the 7th rank and the bishop pawn is on the 5th rank, and the black pieces are obviously optimally placed, that it's a draw. No, it isn't. Sometimes it can be a draw, and I'm going to try to illustrate the difference. Before we get on to this random position that I set up, let's look at the Spielman position. So it's basically the same. There is one slight difference, that the black bishop is preventing the white king from entering the position here. And in this original position, the white bishop is, of course, not able to control the a5 square. So that's a huge difference. In this position, the black bishop is able to control h4. So what white is going to try to do to win this position is he has to try to do this. These endgames are all about outflanking the king on the side of the board. If you can outflank the king, then you win. If you cannot outflank the king, then it's a draw. So in this position, you cannot go to f4. Excuse me, that was the point, not the other thing. You cannot go to f4. If black had a light squared bishop, then you could go to f4. So you have to go to f3. And now the black king can play king g5. And you have no way of entering the position. If you try king g2, then you're making no progress. So you try king e4. And now he simply plays king back to f6. If you try king to d5, then he plays bishop to f4. And you're not making progress. King c6, let's say king to e7. And when you try king b6, then he plays bishop to b8. And it's a draw. It's a draw because you couldn't do this. You couldn't play king f3, king g4, king h5, and then go around. So if you can outflank your opponent's king, then you win. If you cannot, it's a draw. Now let me try to show that in this example. So in this position, it's black to play. It doesn't really matter. So let's say bishop to f7. And now I tried to do the same thing. I tried to prevent the king from entering the position. Of course, here the white king can outflank the black king, so you play the move king to a4. No need to waste time. Obviously, if the bishop was able somehow to get to c3, then it would be a draw, or to or to d8, but then the g pawn would queen. So now all black has to do is lose. There is nothing else. So he tries bishop c4. This is my analysis, but I actually checked it with an engine several times, and even the engine couldn't draw this position. So this is my analysis, but it was actually sound. So I played king a5, and now you're not stopping me from entering the position. Bishop d5, and now either king b7 or what else, or king b7 or bishop d5. If he tries king b7, then I just play king to b4, bishop to d5. And now I go king b5, and I have outflanked you. If you go king c8, I probably go king a6, and if you move away, yeah, actually I can just continue with c6. Okay, so as soon as the pawn advances forward, then it's game over. And if he tries bishop d5, which is slightly more resilient, then you go king a6, and you have outflanked him. So let's say bishop c4, king a7, and now this is what you are trying to achieve when trying to win these endgames. And now basically the black king cannot do anything to stop you. So let's say bishop to d5, king to b8, let's say bishop to e6, stopping you from coming to c8, but you now zugzwang him, bishop e7. Very often in these outflanking games, it's going to be about zugzwang. Why is this zugzwang? Because if the king moves, your king makes progress. If your king gets to b7, then the pawn queens. If the bishop moves, then it either has to allow your king to c8, or it has to allow your pawn to promote. So in this case, let's say bishop f5, and you win with the pawn promotion. And if, let's say, bishop to d5, then you play king c8. And as I said, black had to choose between allowing your king into the position or allowing you to queen the pawn. So now it's just lost. Let's say bishop f7, king to d8. Let's say bishop to e6, king to e8, and eventually this pawn is going to promote. You just go king f8 and queen the pawn. So it's not as simple. There is no rule which I could give you that says if your opponent's pawn is on the 7th rank on the knight file and the bishop pawn is on the 5th rank, then it's a draw. No, it's not. It's a draw if you can stop your opponent from outflanking you. Now we use this Spielman position again to look at the technique. So in this position, the king wasn't able to go to f4. It also wasn't able to go to g4. If the king was on f3 now, then king g4 would win. But king f3 had to be played, and now king g5, and there is no way to make progress. You cannot make progress around this side because the bishop will eventually return to b8, stop you from playing king c7 or king a7. And there is no way to make progress on the king side. Okay, so a draw. Now, this is tough. When we talk about rook and central pawns, the position is always winning, but you have to know how. How do I put it? You use the same technique that you used for knight and bishop files. You have to outflank. Normally, the outflanking takes place on the side opposite to your rook's pawn, so you basically do this. And if you can do this, then one of your pawns is going to promote. So your goal is to keep both of your pawns defended if you can, or defend the other pawn if it gets attacked. And then move your king around the side of the board where you don't have a rook pawn, because you cannot outflank on this side. Let me just show you what would happen if king b5, for example. If king b5, then bishop d8, black waits. Let's say you try a4, king d6, a5, bishop h4, a6, bishop f2, and the draw. Now this position is a draw because everything is blockaded. And this is what I think most people would do in a tournament game who don't know the proper technique to win this endgame. So what you want to do is not push your pawn, your h pawn, mindlessly up the board and allow it to be blockaded by your opponent's pieces, because then the endgame becomes an easy draw. What you want to do is use the outflanking technique and just keep your pawn put. If he plays bishop d6, then you move your pawn to a4, fine, but otherwise keep the pawn where it is. So let's start the outflanking. Again, this is my analysis. I spent about half an hour on this position. This is just a random position I set up. But then I engine checked it. Of course, there were improvements for both sides, but the idea was correct, the plan was correct, so the moves weren't as important. The single moves weren't as important because I was going for the correct plan. And this is the best type of endgame, the most rewarding type of endgame to study, because one mistake doesn't make a big difference if you know what the plan is. You can always start again. Okay, so king to d3. And my plan is I want to go king e2, king f1, king g2, king h3, and king h4, king h5, and all the way over there. So king f4, trying to be as resilient as possible, but king e2. Okay, bishop b6 stops me from going to f2. And now I continue king f1, bishop a7, he stops me from going to g1, but king g2. And there's basically no way to prevent me from moving. If the king should move away from the e-pawn, then e5 would be winning, as I'm going to show you in one example. Whenever e5 happens, then the black king is helpless, and the pawn is too far up the board, and the white king doesn't really have to outflank all the way around. The white king can just help hurt the e-pawn, as we're going to see in one example. So bishop b6, king h3, bishop f2, stopping us. And now it's important to go for Zugzwang. The outflanking is impossible without Zugzwang moves, which is why this technique is tough. If you go king g2, you're not making progress. If you move your bishop, you're not making progress. If you move your a-pawn, you're not making progress, and you're making it easier for black to draw. So what you have to do, excuse me, if you move your bishop, you're not making progress unless it's Zugzwang. So here you can Zugzwang him with bishop b7. And now either the king moves, okay, or the bishop moves. And there is no there is no easy way for the bishop to move. I'll just turn on the engine for this because I hadn't input all the variations. So, okay, in this case, if the bishop moves away, of course, from the control of h4, then you go to h4. If the bishop stays here, then I guess a trick with e5 would eventually work. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to be listening to the engine. Wait, excuse me. But I guess... Wait. Okay, if bishop g3, I can attack the bishop, force it away. Bishop g3 here. Okay, because the king cannot move away. Why shouldn't I do this? at some point. Okay, I will use the engine after all. Excuse me, okay, so let's say bishop here. And now you wait again, and he goes there. And how do I make progress? Okay, this is confusing. Okay, I'll just show you what my analysis was at first. So when he plays king to g5, then you go bishop to c6, you wait again, and if king to f4 back, then bishop to d5, you wait. You have done a triangulation with your bishop, basically, and now it's black to move. So now he has to move the bishop. So my analysis was bishop e3 and then king h4. I still have to figure out what happens on bishop g3. As I said, this is tough, I'm sorry. So now he plays king e5, stopping, the bishop is preventing the king from going to g5, and now king h5, and now it's basically an easy win. Once you succeed in doing this, so bishop e7, bishop e6, king h6, bishop c5, a4, saving your pawn, bishop b4, and king h7, bishop c5, king g8, and now you have outflanked him. So what happens basically is your king helps the e-pawn to move forward by Zugzwang, of course, and then finally when you reach this position it should be an easy win because of king e4, bishop c5, king d5, and the king is going to reach the b7 square, so outflanking. One more thing, if in this position the king should move away from the e-pawn, as I said, e5 would be a winning move, because now after king f5, e6, king f6, king g4, the pawn will be herded forward. It's not easy, but you have to know what to do. So king e7, king f3, bishop b6, king f4, bishop c5, a4, saving your pawn, bishop b4, king f5, bishop c3, king e4, and again you are trying to get to one side of the board where your opponent is not going to be able to challenge you, and that's the b7 square or the c7 square. And now this game becomes easily winning because, okay, the bishop couldn't have been taken because e7, e8 equals queen. And now you start the outflanking maneuver again. And now, I mean, whatever he does, one of the pawns is going to be helped to promotion, probably going to king f7. But again, I want to look at this. Why shouldn't bishop g3 be the most resilient option? I'm going to have to use the engine because this is quite complicated. Okay, what if I wait with my bishop? Okay, then he waits. And then if I wait again, I mean, moving away would allow king to h4, I think. Why would the engine want to do that? This is now the same thing. This is now the same principle of outflanking, but if he just waits here, here, I don't know how to make progress here. I don't think the engine knows either. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry for not having prepared this. This came as a surprise. Okay, this may be a long video. Okay, bishop to g3. And okay, king g2, bishop e1, king f1, for example, and here. And now, can I get to the other side of the board? I don't think so. Okay, yes, I could. But why would he allow me to get to g4? So let's say he keeps his king put by doing this. Yeah, I believe this is a draw. Yeah, okay, I don't know how to win this. I'll try to work on that. So I actually refuted my own idea, or my own analysis of the idea. There was a study by Cheron done in this endgame, and he used the outflanking maneuver. Where I have to find it. Okay, it's this position, but I didn't analyze it yet. Okay, I'm going to have to work on this. I believe that if he tries being resilient with bishop g3, that there is no way to make progress. I could be wrong, however. I think king g2, what the engine suggested, just leads to a draw. I would appreciate any help if you did some analysis on this, because this is too much for my level. I just followed the rules blindly and I didn't question what happens if he prevents me from doing that. Okay. Okay, so he just waits and I push my pawn. If he moves away with the king, I believe this is easy because I can enter the position. So if he waits with the bishop, then can I use the outflanking now? Yes, I can. Maybe there is no way for him to stop me from outflanking him, because this now should be the same thing. Okay. Maybe it's just possible to outflank him if he goes for bishop g3. Okay, again, please help me out if you want to analyze this position. I will work on it. This will take too long if I try to figure it out now. And I will also ask some strong players to help me out with that. Okay, thank you for watching. Sorry about this. So generally, if you can read it in books that rook and central file pawns are always winning. But in a practical game, I mean, if this happened, I would try to outflank him because I know the principle, but I don't know if I would succeed if he just waited with the bishop. Okay, so I mean, even though it's generally winning, it's not winning in a practical game unless you know the rules and unless you, well, don't get confused like me. Okay, let's just repeat what we do know. When you have knight and bishop files, you want your pawns farther away from the promotion square because that gives your king more room to maneuver. If both pawns are on the 7th rank, then it's an easy win. If the knight pawn is on the 7th rank, then there is a fortress option where the defender's king can stop you from outflanking. The winning technique when the pawn is on the 7th rank is outflanking anyway. So if you can outflank, you win. The same goes for rook files. If you manage to outflank in this position along the h file, then you win. If you don't manage to do that, then it's a draw. The engines are confused, people are confused, so these are tough endgames. And even though the principle is the farther away from each other the pawns are, it's easier to win. Sometimes it could be a hard game to win. Okay, thank you for watching. Again, sorry for this, but these endgames are hard. I try to do my best to prepare. And see you tomorrow. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.